So it is now 6:04, and we have a quorum based on the commissioners here, but first order of business, or first thing to do, is to appoint a pro tem chair. So I will look to you commissioners, dear commissioners.
Is there an option that rather than temporary, have we got anybody raising their hand being a candidate?
No one has been nominated that I'm aware of.
All right. I'd like to nominate Miles.
If we could do two, I'll share. I just can't do it all, because I'm not here enough. But boy, nice young guy as an alternate chair would be great.
Michael,
With some experience on the commissioner's board, perfect.
Michael, if you take chair, I'll take alternate.
Okay, I'll do it.
Oh, thank you. And that's not temporary. That's
Correct.
it for
Yep, correct.
till
So,
further notice.
all those in favor, I guess.
Enthusiastic.
Aye.
Okay, so Michael has been elected as chair and Miles as vice chair.
Congratulations, Michael.
Congratulations.
Yeah, more like thank you. Yeah.
Wait to see how much I lean on you.
Well, Michael, your duties are assumed immediately, so there you go. And the next piece will be to go ahead through the modifications or approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes, and public comment. Michael, if you want to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
I would like to add an executive session for a personnel matter and an executive session for a customer matter.
Got it.
And I would also like to add the opportunity for Steve Farman from DEPSA to present on the rate case public hearing.
Great.
Um,
Where's that going to go?
I think
Where
it
should
could
it
go right after the financial reports, perhaps?
Maybe
Before Ken goes into his full.
if Steve's dialed in, or
He is, yep.
then let's give him let's put it as early as we can,
Okay.
just to.
Perfect. So perhaps after public comment?
Great. What do you think, Mike?
That's good, and someone's have to help me with the agenda because I don't have a hard copy and I'm doing this on my phone, which is teeny.
Okay. Sarah's doing it for you.
Excellent. So we will add Steve Farman's presentation on the rate case right after public comment, and then the two executive sessions, one for personnel and one for a customer matter. Okay.
I move to approve the minutes of the June 24th meeting.
I second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Done.
All right. Thank you. And then public comment. And we have Opie here and Ken Nolan. Other than that, there are no other members of the public. So next we'll pass it over to Steve. If you're there, Steve. Yep.
Quicker than I expected. You got me almost in it. Alright, we'll see if I'm smart enough to share my screen.
Oh, while you're doing that, just an acknowledgement that our new commissioner is here.
Hi.
Welcome.
Steve, I thought the slides looked just terrific, really, really crisp and clear.
So I gather you're seeing them then.
Yeah, well, we got them, Sarah got them to us earlier today in email,
Okay.
and
But,
it's good.
alright, yeah, sharing them on the screen, do you see them or?
Yeah, they
do you
look-
maybe you don't need to.
Yep, looks
Don't
good.
see 'em.
Okay. Alright, I'll try to be fairly quick. because that'll be our goal tomorrow night too. Where do we start? Come on, there. We usually start off with a general summary, 2025 cost of service study. The proposed rate increase is for 13.24%, proportionally equally across all rates, all tariffs. It was effective June 1st on a service rendered basis, and that's also effective on a subject to refund basis, depending on what the commission finally allows. So, a couple of background facts. Over a 15-year period from 2029 to last year, when your last rate increase was, you had a 1.97% increase in early 2024. Your rates had been increased by just over 15%, which kind of averages out to about 1% a year, which is less than the rate of inflation. That had tended to run at 2.5%. Recent years it's been a bit higher. If we roll in this 13% rate increase request, an average over 16 years, not 15, you're still looking at a long-term average of about 1.8%. So you've been increasing rates a little less than the rate of inflation.
And Steve, how would you say that compares to other Vermont utilities? You know, without precise data, but is this audience gonna? Are people gonna say 1.8 is good or not? Yeah.
Most everybody up until last year or this year was running like in the 1% long-term average rate increase band. They're a little higher, and there have been mostly double-digit rate increases. We've done a handful this year and late last year. We've had 1, 2 in play that actually topped 20%, and a couple that were under 10. But so you're kind of in the middle of the road,
Okay.
right there with everybody else.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We usually cover this, especially for a public meeting. Vermont state statute rules for developing a rate case. You start with the test year, which is regulatory speak for your financial results from the most recent calendar year. Typically we try to use audited, but we have gotten away without it. Test year for this case is calendar year 2024. And the rate year, which is the projected year that gets used to measure the allowed cost of service, which determines what your rate increase will be ultimately. That year is from June 1 this year to May 31st next year. On top of the test year, known and measurable adjustments are allowed. That's kind of that's a term actually. I believe it's from the statute. But it means that if you want to make adjustments to your test year costs, they have to be documented, and you have to basically prove that they'll occur during the rate year and whatever they're for, particularly if it's an investment like some capital project. The other term that comes into play is used and useful. Basically, it just means it's got to be in service during the rate year to get it allowed in rates. That can make timing a little bit of a challenge at times, but doesn't seem to be an issue in this particular case. Things that are accepted as documentation, I mean, it varies from case to case and situation to situation, but executed contracts, particularly with end dates in them, penalties for late performance are good to have. Gives the commission some reassurance that you're actually going to put in place what they allow you to have in rates and that you're going to do the work. Invoices, we use bond amortization schedules to substantiate projected interest costs. And that's kind of, those are the typical ones. Invoices, bills, that sort of thing comes into play with medical and insurance costs. And with wages, a lot of times you rely on union contract, if you have one in place, to substantiate projected wage increases. When you add those two things together, the test year and the various known and measurable adjustments, you get your rate year cost of service, which is, and then divided by your load, which is always taken from the test year, your retail load. And that gives you the percent increase. Yeah, so this slide will cover how we got to the 13.24% rate increase. Starting the test year revenue requirement. This is another way of saying your retail revenues from the test year. We're just over 7 million. We made $965,000 of known and measurable adjustments. We'll get to some detail on those in a couple of slides. But those two taken together gave you a rate year revenue requirement of just over 8,018,000. And there's one other small adjustment that occurs when you have had a rate increase implemented for part of the test year. The way you do the revenue calculation, you have to bring in the missing piece that wasn't in your test year, and it gets included in the base revenue for the coming year that's used in calculating the rate increase. If you don't do that, you wind up double collecting that slice. In this case, it's small. It's about $28,000. It reduces your rate request a little bit because it's revenue you'll have that wasn't reflected in the test year. I mean, it's revenue you would have regardless of whether you filed a rate case or not. So, ran over my dog. My chair. She didn't think that. I don't know if you heard that or not, but she got her foot under my chair. So the net adjustments, once you factor in the slight pickup of partial year revenue, amounted to $937,000. You divide that into the test year revenue requirement is $7,052,000, and you will get the 13.24%. That's the mechanics of it. Here we have, it's a quick summary of major categories, components that were responsible for the rate increase. Net power costs purchase power costs were about $259,000. O&M costs are up $580,000. Interest expense was 112 of the 937, and depreciation, taxes, an adjustment to net income to reset your tier ratio, which is a kind of a required level for net income at 2.0. That 580,000 is almost all wage related. We'll get to that more too, but it's wage and benefits that follow it, insurance, medical, etc. There were some small adjustments in the other income and revenue category. That 13,000, I believe that's an adjustment for net metering. We make an adjustment to reflect that how incremental new net metering projects that occur during the test year and sometimes before the rate year begins. There's that gap in time between, because those cause revenue erosion. It doesn't get reflected in the load that's used as the basis, because we use test year load strictly for the basis of rate calculations. So that right there, that's a little bit of the lost revenue that you associate with just a small handful of projects this time around. Oh, not too far. But yeah, so the total additional was 937. There's the 7,080,000 base, and the increase was 13%. Now we'll get down to component by component. Power supply costs. I think of this first category, first three lines of, I think of that as really market energy, market related. Resource charges and credits. That reflects what you pay to third parties for purchase power contracts, any jointly owned generating units, and the like. ISO settlement, if you're not familiar, looks at how you supply and pay for your load in two separate pieces. I always think of it as a gross approach. But on the one hand, you pay your third parties, or you pay O&M costs if you own generation, and you pay contract charges to third parties, whoever you bought power from, and all the generation from that. You pay that to the third parties, and then all the generation from your own resources, contracts, gets paid to you by ISO New England in your settlement at whatever the LMP rate is, and that's an hourly transaction. So whatever you're generating during an hour, you get paid the LMP. And for that generation, you pay your suppliers whatever your contract says you pay them. And that's what the 829 represents. Your charges for the various contracts you have, McNeil generation, O&M on your hydro when it's running. And the second line, the energy market that I refer to as load, that's the other side of the settlement transaction with ISO. For all your load, you pay the LMP for your hourly load all year long. It used to be in the old days, those things would actually get netted in the settlement calculations, and you pay or be paid the net amount. When ISO New England came to be and they changed the settlement to the relatively new system, I guess it depends on how old you are, whether you look at that as new or not, but they started doing it this way, where they separate the resource costs from the load costs, and you net them, and it comes to the same thing in the end. Anyways, your cost increase net for load and your resources was about $155,000. There's a couple things going on in the capacity market. DAISY, don't ask me what the acronym means, because maybe Ken will save me, but I can't remember. But it's the new form of capacity market. It's taken the place of the old forward capacity market. That resulted in a $100,000 increase. And a couple of reliability programs that ISO had going in 2024 that cost you some money were terminated, so that's a savings, and net the capacity is up about $12,000. And that gotta control that mouse better. Regional network service, Velco transmission. You'll hear that regional network service called Schedule 9, TVO, RNS, OATT, a lot of acronyms and names for it. That's about $200,000. Velco transmission, this is the residual VTA contract. Tariff, actually. So that's about $200,000 $250,000 of increase, and then because you've changed your arrangements with Great Mountain Power, you're not paying $163,000 worth of transmission that was present in the test year. And that's up to about 91,000. So your total power supply is up to about 259,000. And the little blue footnote has to do with McNeil and some timing adjustments that your auditors require. And it causes a little bit of a difference between what we call power supply in the bills that we send you and what you put on your books as power supply. Basically, the way that McNeil bills are timed, in 2024, your auditors require you to move the January invoice back to December 23 and the January 2025 invoice back to December 24. And that resulted in like a $16,000 difference. I don't think you can see it here. The department, when they review this case, will see it. The power supply that Heather testified to in that case was 270 something. It was $16,000 higher because of that McNeil adjustment. And there's always somebody that will trip over that and ask. So I just footnoted that. Let's see. Oh, now, here's where the big money is. Payroll, almost $50,000. That's the result of a massive amount of turnover and change between 2024, your test year, and the upcoming rate year, actually this year, 25 calendar. You had quite a few vacancies early in the year, in the test year. And then you brought in, eventually, replacements much later in the year. And because of, I think, a variety of things, union negotiations, inflation, the post-COVID effect on wages, your new hires came in at higher rates than the people that had left in 2024.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I hate to stop the middle of the presentation, but
Okay.
the payroll is 448 over what's on our books for the test year. But part of our test year, we had outside people doing work because we needed to have staff to do things that we hired. Is that part of the 448, or is that kind of a separate number?
That's a separate number in a separate place.
Okay.
It shows up in A&G under outside services probably.
Correct.
So the 448 really isn't a total increase.
Correct.
It's an increase compared to our staff level, but not compared to how much we paid for people at test year because they had outside people doing the work.
Yeah, but be careful because when the regulators look at this, they're going to look at what you paid those consultants in 2024 and say, well, that's a non-recurring cost. We would want to pull that out of your case because those costs won't be there in the general rate. The 448 will be still.
Okay.
So, it's kind of a push-pull game. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, so replacements around you, union scale wages went up a lot for a lot of the other utilities that surround you. That's part of the equation in the increase from the replacements that you brought in the test year. In order to attract and keep help, you kind of got to keep up with your neighbors. And that was a factor here too. And then, I believe, based on your union contract, but we assumed 5% wage increases in June 24 and in June 25. Medical benefits, medical, dental, vision, retirement, HRA, which is, I don't know what that is. It's something similar to an HSA, right, Sarah?
Correct.
Anyways, that whole collection of benefits was $135,000. And there was a really tiny adjustment for a renewable energy standard that nets us down to the 581 total for O&M. That's a function of the fact that PIPSA bills those res costs based on the budget, and it trues it up in the following year. I think your true up was that very small amount. Next. This here, and I don't know if you'll want to leave this in here for the public hearing. I removed all the names, I removed all the salary figures. This is part of the calculation of the $480,000 wage increase. But I tossed it in here so that we could highlight all the people that left from that first group of 4, and how many hours they actually were present and available during the rate year before they left. I'm sorry, during the test year. And then the second group are the employees that you replaced those first 4 with, plus the new GM, because you lost your GM mid-year as well. And so over here we have the hours, in that third column, the hours that the new people were here. If you add them up, and that 11,960 that's near the bottom of the page, that's simply kind of a benchmark. I just said, well, 5 employees, if they all work a full year, and then I multiplied by an extra 15% to reflect that most of these people all work overtime. Anyways, to take the difference between what hours you actually had available and what you would normally expect to be available, and you were like 6,000 labor hours short in 2024. So no surprise that if you've got a full complement now, going forward into a full rate year, your wages are going to go up a lot. And that's really what we're looking at. And whether this is a comfortable thing to put out in public, technically it is public. It was included in the filing with more detail than this. So it's out there for anybody who wants to go find it. We had to put it together this way in order to support the adjustment. But
that goes back to the people who hired from the outside to pick up the difference. Part of it.
Not sure I get what you mean.
Well, we have 6,000 hour shortfall, but we didn't have enough people to do the work, but we did hire outside staff,
Yes. Yeah.
and that kind of makes up for that 6,000 hours.
That's your offset.
Yeah, it's not like we can do it with 6,000 hours less. We just could do it now with our people instead of consultants or borrowing people.
Right. Exactly.
So I think it's a good chart. It's interesting.
Okay. Okay, more slide, I think. Yeah. Other expense, kind of like other cats and dogs that weren't very big. Net income, that's an adjustment I mentioned way early. Your net income, I don't remember off the top of my head, for the test year was higher than the 109,000 that a standard tier calculation allows you. The department always supports identifying what net income is allowed in your cost of service by looking at your interest expense and basically multiplying it, adding it a second time. The tier ratio, which is times interest earned ratio of 2, is the standard for determining net income. And its purpose is really for coverage purposes, coverage ratio purposes, to keep lenders happy, so that it's a little bit of extra income that's allowed when you've got bonds and you're paying interest, so that you're sure to have enough to make your interest payments. So they take whatever your interest was, and they add another level with that same interest number. And the actual calculation is net income plus interest divided by interest. Which is why I said they just added income. It's your net, yeah, I don't know. I hope that makes sense. I have a hard time explaining this. But anyways, the result, I think it was 109,000 that's actually in the proposed rates. And your net income for 2024 was $62,000 higher than that. So we had to adjust it down to that standardized level. Depreciation was up a smidge, capital additions. Payroll taxes, 44,000, it's a pretty good sized number, and it's directly related to the wage increase. That's a percentage of your payroll. Somewhere around 6 or 7% usually. State taxes, gross revenue tax, that's there because those taxes are paid based on your operating revenue, which is 99% retail revenue. It's 0.5% for gross revenue and 0.5% for weatherization. So with the almost $1 million increase in known and measurable adjustments, you get an increase in the taxes you're going to have to pay, and those get included in your cost of service. That's your 0.5%, 1%. Interest, there's the interest answer. Your interest went up $112,000. You issued some bonds, lines of credit, whatever, in 2024. There's the $28,000 adjustment for collecting the rest of your 2024 rate increase, and this other miscellaneous, this small cats and dogs, salt collection added up to $71,000. And that all adds up to the $937,000 of known and measurable adjustments. And that kind of brings us to the end. Time for questions or?
So I have another question. So this is based on the fact that we don't have a hydro plant operating right now. Right, so, and I don't know what that's worth. Let's say conceivably, if we had the hydro plant working, the rate increase would only be 12% or 11%. Is it conceivable that we go in for this and they say, okay, we'll give you the 13%, but a year from now you have to reevaluate it with the hydro plant in operation, we can decrease it back down again? Or is it like a one-time?
No, it wouldn't work that way. Partly because that would be what the regulators call single issue rate making. You can't go in and we couldn't go in and file and ask for a rate increase based on one thing like that. And they can't do it in the other direction. What would be more likely to happen is that, a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever you need another rate increase, if at that time the hydro is operating, and it's operated long enough to have a little bit of history,
Yeah.
You would then, you'd include your hydro O&M costs, and you'd also include the hydro generation in, if I can go back to that slide.
Well, I think kind of telling the story, Michael, I think there are a lot of capital investments and operating expenses that are going to occur long term, so that we can better align some of the maintenance and long-term, system maintenance and projects that have been planned for a really long time in place, and to try and build in those mechanisms to set the appropriate funds aside, through those reserves as well. But Ken?
There is a corollary here, Michael, as well. The reason most of the utilities in Vermont haven't been in for a rate increase in 15 years is because back in 2010, 2012, we had a number of hurricanes in the Gulf that shut down natural gas wells. So power prices spiked way up. Everybody had to go in for rate increases at that point. Then when the gas pipelines got back in place, power prices dropped. So everybody had extra revenue, and a lot of people build up kind of a fund balance over that time.
Okay,
But the regulators didn't force anybody to come in and say, oh, well, now you got a windfall, you gotta reset your rates.
okay,
They allowed you to build that pile of money until you needed it for something else.
that's
And then when
great,
you need the next rate increase, they kind of reset everything.
that's good.
Okay.
Good perspective.
So, the short answer, Michael, would be that your example with the hydro it would be part of the picture, but only a part of it. When you have another rate increase, next time you request it.
Yeah.
And this time around, because you don't have the hydro generation, there's a market contract or spot purchases. Replacing that generation is probably a little bit more expensive because when your hydro's running, the kilowatt hours don't really cost you anything
Right.
other than the O&M, which is kind of measured separately anyways. So, it wouldn't make a huge difference. I don't think there's a big cost increase difference from the hydro being down, even in this case. It's not huge.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Steve?
No.
So,
I have a question about tomorrow night. Steve, are you the one, do you do all the talking the way you just did? You go through this on our behalf?
That's up to you guys. I can. Sometimes I do.
Yeah,
Some places, some general managers want to be the ones to do the talking. There's been a couple over the years that don't want anybody there from outside. It varies. Whatever you want.
Beth is out at a conference, and with Steve being the other most familiar person with the actual analysis, and we're planning that he will do, the presentation. I will be there to answer the other questions that may come up, and then we go from there.
great.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yep.
It's putting our best foot forward.
okay. Well, thank you, Steve, for jumping on. Thank you for putting this together.
And as for the call, I'm gonna be out of town on a business trip. I can't dial in, but it doesn't matter. They don't know who's dialed in or not.
Yeah, no, they will, they'll open the floor at 7. There's a presentation that starts at 6:30 for the public, and then generally there's not a whole lot of questions that come up.
Okay.
But if there are, then they are addressed during the hearing.
And that they'd be addressed by Steve or you, depending on
Correct,
the nature.
yes.
Okay. And so whether we're on or not really doesn't
Shouldn't
matter.
be, yeah.
Okay.
It's actually very rare that any commissioners or trustees take place in one of these public hearings. If that makes you feel any better, it's
Does.
almost never happens.
Good.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right,
Nick.
I'll bail out here then. I can figure out now. There it is. Bye all.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay. So that got put in. The next two things under administrative business on the agenda, Michael, are to select an alternate representative for the VEPSA Board of Directors, and then select the HED representatives for the next, for the rest of the year for the select board meetings.
Great.
So I don't know,
So-
I had sent out
Yes.
kind of a proposed motion and kind of logic behind that. David and I had talked briefly about it, and I think this is a good way to, appoint a director appropriately for the VEPSA board.
So I'd move to, this is just to enable the discussion. If it's not out of order, Mike, I'd say, I move to name, I'm supposed to go with your formal name. I was about to say Opie. No, we'll name the position. That we establish that the town manager of Hardwick will be for VEPSA the alternate representative of Hardwick Electric Department. And I put that out there for discussion, yeah.
I have a motion by Roger, second by Miles, and discussion.
I have no problem with that. I think it's great.
Thank you.
For now.
Michael, you wanna put it to an official vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the other one is to assign representatives for the remainder of the year for the select board meetings. And this basically is just one of the directors or commissioners or staff attend the select board meeting to offer, high bullet points about what is going on with the department.
And Mike, we've got, since we've got Eric Remick here representing the select board, I thought it might be interesting to ask if there's some history and some specific objectives that would help us think through the pros and cons for those select board meetings of having a commissioner do the update or having the general manager do the update. And I honestly don't really have an agenda. I'm not trying to run away from my, my couple times a year doing it. But if Sarah could make the time, it's a nice opportunity for her to be in the community, if you will, in the select board, you gather all together, and those are all key people for Sarah to have a really good relationship with. So what do people think? And I'm starting with Sarah, I'm happy to do my time, and I think all of us are, because we feel like we're sort of lending a hand. On the other hand, we're denying you the opportunity to be there, providing an update, sort of making the connections. And so that's from your standpoint, and then
Right.
after you comment on it, Eric can comment on what the select board wants to get out of it.
I am flexible either way. I think, I agree with the reasons you expressed. I also believe that at the meeting that I did attend, one of the other select board members had said it was good to hear from the other commissioners as well. So I think it could go either way. And
So from my perspective, it's, the history has been that sometimes the select board feels distant from the electric department, and so having someone come once a month and just give the high level overview is really helpful, and I think it helps bridge and make a connection. I think that's probably the most important thing. From my point of view, it does seem that whoever comes, very likely the general manager has given them the list of what to say, because otherwise how would they know, really, for that update? And so I think it's up to you guys. From the select board point of view, as long as someone comes and delivers the message and gives an update at a high level, that's great. It could be anyone. We'd be happy to see Sarah every time. We'd be happy to see a rotating cast, whatever works best.
I'd like to see a commissioner come each time so they understand what they're talking about, and we understand that the people that the select board appoints are good appointments, and they're paying attention to what's going on. And they can come and clearly communicate to the board what is actually going on at the election department.
That's good.
Instead of making Sarah give you the language and the...
Well, but even if Sarah provides the list, then you
Right.
have to,
Yeah.
presumably if you don't understand, you have to ask, well, what is this?
So it also measures the competency of commissioners.
So, what do you think?
Oh, Pete, I'm not sure I followed that.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that commissioners are tracking what is happening at the select board, or you want to measure the competence of
election
the...
department.
Got it.
So they're able to convey this message to the public. But that's just my opinion. Doesn't really matter.
So Roger, keeping with your thought, why don't we just alternate Sarah and a commissioner each time? So Sarah goes to every other one, and in between each Sarah visits, a commissioner goes. So they see the commissioners, Sarah goes, and probably gives a much better update than we do by playing post office with her comments. And Jake, just so you know, the first one, you don't have to go alone.
Right, yeah. No, I was at the select board meeting last month, and I saw that, yeah, I could understand the value of having a representative there and having commissioners there, as it's as you said, it would be a board appointed position. That's a good connection, I guess.
And they're not difficult meetings to be at.
I don't know, I go to all of them.
So we can, I mean, if that sounds like a reasonable plan, I agree with the alternating, and if you wanted to join, you know, for these ones that I'm attending to, before we put you out there on your own, whatever works. But I know, you know, I can do at least the 21st and the 16th, so the August and October meetings. I'm trying to check to see, like, schedule if there are other.
We don't do every meeting though. We only do one meeting a month.
This is the third Tuesday, right? Or
Third.
Thursday, the third Thursday.
Yeah, so it's usually the second meeting of the month. We do the commissioners report,
Right.
not the first meeting. So it's just once a month.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm assuming your meeting schedule doesn't change for November, because it's before.
Just in the summer, we have some funky dates because of Fourth of
July.
July and we have some vacations.
So if we could have someone commit for the September and November meetings?
So who's up next? Who did, I did the last one. Who's up now? Who's doing?
Well, I did the last one.
Covered for me.
Okay. There was three others that I did, okay.
I was gone.
I don't know the order, but I can take the November.
Okay. Anyone take September? Can you take September? September 18th?
I can do September.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then I will plan to take the December meeting. I might need coverage for that one.
Yeah, and we'll all have to cover
Yeah.
each other as we go, yeah.
All right, perfect, thank you. Okay,
Now we got some real stuff.
so next item on the agenda is an authorization request for the Craftsbury Circuit right-of-way reclamation project. I submitted some details on the project scope via the memorandum. Essentially, this stretch of the system has experienced significant outages, recurring outages, both from vegetation management and just system equipment failure. It's still, you know, working fine, but the trees are definitely coming down, and it is causing outages for the entire Craftsbury Circuit, most of Greensboro, and part of Hardwick on a regular basis. As such, we did an engineering study review, and that is also a stretch of the system that we are looking to upgrade a new conductor to a higher capacity wire size, and also complete the three-phase conversion of that. And that will actually increase the capacity to serve those circuits further down the line. And that came up through interconnection requests and things along that nature. However, in order to actually do that work, we need to be able to access the lines. So right-of-way clearance comes first, and we have been talking with our contract crews on potential a better arrangement for the per footage cost if we do it by circuit instead of individual stretches of road and by footage. And so this was a good opportunity to test that, you know, structure and agreement structure for the contract crews, and we've received a bid for it. It does come in lower per foot, all things considered, and it also establishes more crews being assigned to the work in a shorter amount of time. And we're looking to get additional bids, but you know, the original bid that came in was about $223,000 in an 8-week timeline for the full three-phase clearance from Route 1415 split all the way up through Craftsbury. And so that would be an 8-week project, and my request for authorization is to negotiate and continue to search for other bids, but for not to exceed of that amount and execute that right-of-way clearance agreement.
How much of the benefit is reliability, and how much of it do you think will also be in cost savings? Like, is this one where it's the right thing to do for capacity, for future, and it's the right thing to do for reliability? Or is there also a financial benefit? Because in your slides you talked about there's some sort of big, and I was wondering what big is big.
So
Relative to the investment.
Yeah, I mean, there are several components to it. I think there is a financial benefit because if, once we get the clearance through, the goal is to replace those poles that are no longer, that should be replaced. And ideally, if we can move them a little bit closer to the road so that they can be reached with a bucket. They're just outside, a lot of the stretch is just outside what you can actually access roadside. So it would be considered cross-country, and if you can move it closer to the road at the same time that we're doing that reconductoring, we can plan that construction phase of it pretty well, and that will actually cut down on the long-term maintenance costs and right-of-way clearance because it'll be closer to the road and not so there just won't be as much vegetation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just saying, on top of that, we are hoping to talk with each of the towns that this is impacting and see if there's a way to, cost share to some degree for the right-of-way clearance at least.
Does any of that fall within road right-of-way, or will right-of-way have to be approached for clearing and relocating some of the structures?
I think there may be some. I believe all of the plan will be pretty much within the existing right-of-way that we have. We'll just try to move a little closer if we can. I'm in conversation with V-Trans on some other issues, and so hopefully we can come to a better understanding. I do believe there will be some, actual permitting work that's going to have to be put in during the construction phase. But I'm focused primarily on getting that clearance started because we keep experiencing major outages, and I feel like it's one of those things that shouldn't wait. It's just sooner than I think we had anticipated as far as budgeting goes.
That was I wasn't clear on how this compared to our budget.
So when it comes down to it, it's about half of what we had budgeted for 2025, which was already an increase. But at the same time, I think it unfortunately it needs to happen.
So it's less than what's in the budget?
So this is half of what our overall budget for vegetation management and right-of-way maintenance was.
So is this gonna cause is that gonna cause us to have overspend our budget?
It might.
It might.
Is this, it's a fair amount of our circuit,
Correct.
if I read correctly, so are we tackling things that we would already do, or do you anticipate this will put us at 1.5 our budget?
It's tackling things we already would have had to do, but the practice so far has been to prioritize the make-ready clearance for fiber solutions. That's been where we've been scheduling the crews. They're bouncing around depending on where these work orders are, and I think that has worked to some degree, but right now, this is what we need as a utility to invest and redirect some of those funds to. So I think that it will require, some adjustments, and I'm sure that it's going to be, our net will be a little bit different on right-of-way maintenance and clearing, but at the same time, I think this will be work that has to be done.
So this is the Craftsbury line, which last year I think Craftsbury line had the most outages.
Correct.
If I remember that chart.
Yes.
So, and if this would eliminate the majority of those, we do then get the savings of not sending crews out in emergencies to do whatever has to be done to put it back in order. So there is some return on investment, I think. And is the 223 just clearing, or is that some of the pole relocations?
That's just the right-of-way clearance and the, flagging and notifying customers and all of those pieces that would chip in. So that's just the right-of-way clearance. This does not account for the construction phase and capital project piece of it, which is why I'm trying to break this very distinctly into those two steps. Because we can't start the construction until it's cleared. but we're trying to plan that out and try and make it work so that we can dedicate the appropriate staff resources and or call on our neighboring utilities to, lend a hand if we need equipment or manpower.
Could I ask a few background questions for my sake? So when you say outage events, major events, does that represent outage for the entire area served by this main line? Or is that representing, is anything that's a few customers or more considered an outage event reported here?
So any reported event
Yeah.
is an event.
Okay.
So if there are multiple customers that are taken out by one tree that fell, it's
Mhm.
still one event, right? But if there are, individual, it's an event.
So when you attribute them to like this circuit, it's any event that's at this main line and further from
Correct, I mean,
in the
yeah,
service
depending,
area.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's good.
Where on the line it occurred.
And then also a question about the fiber. I mean, this might be background information, but so are we typically doing vegetation management for fiber installs on like an as-needed basis? Is that part of the typical right-of-way management? And you mentioned something along those lines.
Yeah, so the more recent years, the right-of-way maintenance and make-ready work required for joint attachments has necessitated trimming outside of our usual rotation and schedule,
Okay.
vegetation management schedule. And so there's been a focus on, prioritizing and placing
Mm-hmm.
the trimming crews for those projects, for those
Mhm.
work orders. And they've been very large, right, so it's covering entire towns.
Yeah.
And so that's been a bit of the challenge on top, as we are going through for these job orders though, and work orders for attachments, our working foreman has very consciously tried to make sure that we actually clear the circuit as a whole, right? If there's a
Mhm.
span line that's being trimmed for the 7 poles, we're
Mhm.
gonna trim the 7 poles,
Okay.
while you're there, do the work while you're there.
Got it. Great.
Cost of clearing, maintaining that right away.
Mhm.
Will there be reimbursement from other utilities? Such as telephone, reimbursements for clearing, maintaining for
We
them?
will pursue reimbursements. It's generally not going to be as much as it would be for different types of projects, because we're taking it outside of the regular schedule. But we will pursue it for sure. And we've been having, challenges getting reimbursement for known projects, let
Yeah.
alone, ones that
Okay, so,
we're pursuing on our own.
if they run over their time schedule, the cost is proposed on 8 weeks. Is there a cap, or will that?
Yes, it's a not to exceed. The dollar amount is a not to exceed. If the time that it takes them to complete it is longer, that's not, that's not something that we would have to bear.
Okay.
How are we paying for the capital project that this enables?
That's why I haven't proposed the capital project piece of it yet. I'm hoping that we can get some grant funding and also, maneuver some of the various obligations that we have. It's to be determined, and I'll be blunt about that. I mean, I think I don't want to propose an incomplete plan, as far as that second phase.
What's the typical, time frame that you would have to do a capital improvement following a major vegetation management like this? Like how long following this until it's needs to be done again
So
to do the capital?
the vegetation maintenance cycles are usually between 7 and 10 years.
Okay.
So there's time.
There's-
I mean,
okay.
yeah.
My understanding is that that's a much longer timeline than peers, and perhaps other people in the room can comment on that. And I thought that was something we were trying to get away from.
I think because of the current state of the right-of-way, there has to be a reclamation, which is more of the full clearance. And then there are other strategies to maintain the right-of-way using, with a forester or some sort of actual arborist who can identify where trouble spots are, where your trees are gonna grow faster, or where there are certain species of trees that you're gonna have to put on a shorter cycle. And that's where I would prefer to go. If we have a lot of low growth shrubbery, that's less of a concern to me than, you know, a bunch of maple trees or saplings, right? I think we have to get smarter, but in order to get smarter, we have to be able to see what's there, and we can't really see what's there on a lot of the system right now.
So you're saying this is the first necessary step for any of those improvements?
Correct.
So what you need tonight is you need a vote of the board to proceed with receiving additional bids
And executing.
and executing the plan. So Mike, is it okay to make a motion on this?
Yeah, I think part of the motion is so solicit other proposals and negotiate to a price that doesn't exceed the $223,000 we have now. Right, Sarah?
Correct.
Okay, so I move to approve the right-of-way clearance project for receiving additional bids, so we have a minimum of 3 bids in total, and that the ultimate bid that's accepted by Hardwick Electric be no more than this first bid we've received. And that you can move forward with awarding the business and executing the project on that basis. Sorry, that wasn't very smooth, Mike, but.
That was good. Little pause in there. I second that. I think it says it all. Any discussion?
I'll second that.
If there's no discussion, we can vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
It's up to you, Sarah.
No pressure. Thank you. So the financial reports, as I said, Beth isn't here, but if there are certain specific questions, she did say that she can, you know, respond to them afterwards, but.
Yeah, I had just, I won't be long on this, but a couple of quick questions were, there's no transmission expense in the way the numbers are tallied up. You know, there's a budgeted amount, and then there's a 0 year-to-date. So it might be just a function of when bills come in or something, but if you could ask her that would be great. And then I just wanted to flag for everybody is we are burning through cash right now. You know, we're down to this 335,000 or something, and we took a big bite out of it. And in the cash flow, probably when we talk to Beth again, what we should have her do is show how much of the cash flow is just the operating expense, the operating budget, and how much of it is the capital projects.
Right.
Because it looked like a month in which we really ate up a big chunk of our cash. And now we get to the point where we only have 335. We do another month and another month at that level, we're gonna be borrowing pretty quick, so.
Yeah, I will absolutely.
So those are just, that, I don't know, stack those up as something you can just talk with her. There's no follow-up needed, it's more as we look at the next month and come together again.
Yeah, and I've been talking with Beth and trying to explore exactly how best, you know, or if we're following the current guidelines on how to separate it out, if it's meeting what the PUC's requirements are, and trying to identify how we can better record or track the differences in what the transmission and generation costs and, you know, the operations and maintenance of those specific elements of the business. As a vertically integrated, fully regulated utility, it does get more complicated. And so she and I are working together on how to work through some of that, but
Great.
I think it's.
Yeah, the reporting's super. I mean, you can imagine where we were 3 years ago. So you've got things in a great shape in relative terms. These are more like additional little fine-tuning things as we go.
And we will be starting to kick off the budgeting process for 26, working with staff and trying to identify exactly what sort of projects they have in mind and how to work through future budgeting as well.
And, you know, where that was coming from on cash flow, and we're sort of oriented to it. You know, we've put this thought into having a line of credit that we can draw. We've got our other loans. But the big elephant in the corner, which Ken and the team are probably watching, is what's FEMA gonna do? You know, when's the FEMA money really gonna arrive? And if FEMA money doesn't arrive, and we've got a big capital expenditure year, we could not only exhaust all our cash, we could start really, you know, exhausting what borrowing we've set up. I mean, it could happen really quick.
I agree, and I
'Cause they're
think
big
it's something
numbers.
that we need to be cognizant of and be tracking
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah. So that's more, I think that's the point of visibility for you and Beth, is just look at how you're doing operating every month. How much is that, you know, cash positive or cash negative? It
Right.
should be cash positive.
Right.
And then how much are we going over and above that to sink into capital projects?
Right.
And where's the money gonna come from?
Well, and I mean, I think we're very much looking forward to the bills that are going to be paid in August are going to be of the rate increase, so we're hopefully, you know, customer bills, the revenue we receive will be from the rate increase, so
Yep.
we're hoping that that will help with some of the cash flow and the ability to better track that.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions to relay or have her report back on? Pretty good segue, I think, to the BEPSA presentation, actually.
Yeah. So it looks like you put the presentation in the packet.
I did.
I did bring copies if anybody needs one. And, Michael, I think Sarah has this electronically if you guys want a copy of it.
Yeah, we got it. It's great. Jake, you're lucky getting this. 'Cause
Yeah, good context right off the bat.
Yeah, and I talked to Opie in the back, and we're gonna set up an orientation for him to come and meet the staff and release the
Great.
operations.
Great.
Oh, thank you. So a lot here, I'll try to go quickly, but if you got questions, feel free to fire away, and go as deep as you want to. To start off, just a reminder, VEPSA was created back in 1979 by the legislature. We're actually in the statute. If you look at 30 VSA Chapter 84, gives you all the details on what we can and can't do. In a nutshell, we were created to act like a back office for the small municipal utilities. So public power, whether it's muni or co-op, can be members. We do work occasionally for Green Mountain Power, now for Global Foundries. We're working with them, but they cannot be members. They can just take services under contract. We are a membership organization, so all the members have seats on the board of directors and can appoint alternates, as we did tonight. Second slide, I put a list of the members, and at the bottom you'll notice Burlington and Stowe are now included. They're in a different color because the small munis in black are full members, and there's some obligations you sign up for that, and you get full access to all the services, all the staff. Burlington and Stowe have decided to be, it's called the strategic member category. So they get to participate in board meetings and they have access to our staff, but it's on a $1 per hour basis, and we only serve them if we have capacity to do so after meeting the member needs. So, mostly the benefit is they're in the room for a lot of the board discussions, and there's better coordination there.
Is this number of meters, Ken?
Number of customers, and it's pretty rough. Some of them are a couple years old. Gives you an idea of the size. The next slide generally lists the services we're providing. And I'll be honest, it changes and grows every year. It really depends on what the state's pushing on at any given time as to what we end up working on. The power supply is our bread and butter. It's 2 generators we have an ownership interest in. We do a lot of the power procurement. I'll go through the list in a second. Financial services, which we just discussed at the board retreat last week. I think financing for the members is going to move to the front of the list.
Great, great.
Everybody
I
is
feel like,
struggling.
yeah, we stumbled around a little without some more help, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's struggling with exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how we can help. The rates and planning, the rate cases Steve just went through, and there's a whole bunch of other services there. We do a lot of representation on the regulatory side in front of the Public Utility Commission, the Department of Public Service, and in the legislature. And then the last couple of years, we really expanded the IT front. I think one member left that we don't provide IT support to. So running the networks, procuring, trying to help make sure things are running, cybersecurity, all of that, we're now doing through our shop. Communications and outreach, so we can help with marketing campaigns or communications campaigns. GIS and field services, so mapping of your system is something we've been trying to stand up. To be honest, that project has been having some hiccups. Fits and starts, we're getting there slowly, but it's involving a lot more effort on both member and VEPSA side than we anticipated originally. The renewable energy standard, we can go into some detail on, but the whole RPS in other states, but we have to be different, so we call it renewable energy standard here, so procuring green energy, and we have a special tier called Tier 3 for helping customers get off from fossil fuels. Utilities have to participate in it. And then hasn't been so much an issue in Hardwick's case, but some of the utilities with large single customers, like Orleans have Ethan Allen Furniture, Ludlow has a Chemo Mountain, they're 50% of their retail sales is one customer. So we do a lot of work on key accounts there, trying to make sure that they're happy. It's hard to read here, but electronically you can blow it up. I just want to give you an idea of the staff. Basic takeaway is 4 departments. Starting on the far left-hand side, that's power supply. We have 3 people in power supply right now. Heather Darcy is the manager. Dave Gagney, who's at the bottom of the picture, is actually the plant operator at our peaking plant in Swanton. So he's up there doing maintenance every day. And we're in the process of hiring another person into that department. The second column over toward the right is rates and planning, that's Steve's group. So they handle all of the rate cases, cost of service studies, financial planning, IRPs, got a whole laundry list of stuff they take care of. The third column over is their IT department, which is 5 people in total. We just added a project manager to that group because we've got a lot of larger grants and IT projects coming, so we're trying to get more formal in how we manage projects. And then the very right column is our finance department, with a note that Amy Parra, who acts as my assistant, so she's kind of listed up above, she splits her time between finance and keeping me on track.
Can I rewind with a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of communications and outreach support that you give members?
Sure, we've done social media posts with AMI coming out now. We've done a lot of like the door hangers, drafts of advertisements, customer notices. If you guys have got a particular campaign you want to run, you can do some drafting of materials for you to look at. It's mostly around specific projects we have, unless a member has got something that they want us to try to help with.
One of the things that we had requested and just haven't been able to get scheduled is Garth is a really good photographer and videographer, and so we're hoping to get him to come out here and take some pictures of the communities, and we can use those as stock photos and various materials going forward. So that's one of the other options that we
We use them for annual reports on web pages.
Nice.
He maintains our web page as well. And we did, I'll talk about it a little later on, but we got a grant from Senator Sanders that resulted in a project in Northfield. And he put together a 3-minute video describing that project and how it came to be. So things like that,
Yeah.
we can help
Great.
with.
Great. Quick thought is with our rate increase, it's double-digit percentage, which I think is surprising to a lot of our rate base, but also seeming quite appropriate and in line with other utilities in the state. I think assistance messaging that could go a long way. I think we've done a good job officially communicating the policy in sort of an official tone, but getting more approachable information out there, kind of positioning stuff with our neighbors relative to the majority of ratepayers in the state, I think could be useful as we continue to focus on customer relations.
I'll take that back and follow up afterwards.
Thanks, Ken.
Next slide. Just wanted to give you a general kind of structure of how we operate, and Sarah asked that I put some numbers in here related to Hardwick, so I pulled numbers from our FY25 budget, so you get some context of what this is. We have a couple of buckets that we put things in. So anything that a member is participating in that is specific or has a different allocation, where you've signed a contract or something of that nature, we tend to set up as a project. So it's in a separate fund, it's tracked separately. We allocate some of our staff time to it as admin expense, but it's really has its own budget and tracking. And then anything that's more generic that everybody has access to goes in the general operations bucket. So if we're doing rate cases, something like that, it's kind of general, we schedule people out and you have access to the staff. Where some of these specific projects, and we'll get into them, have their own budget and their own allocation and revenue stream. So the general operations, that cost is allocated really pro rata based on your retail sales, and it's over a two-year average. It's kind of a rolling two-year average. So things move up and down. We've honestly had some issues with Ludlow in particular, because if Okemo has a big snowmaking year, then their load goes way up, their costs go way up.
Yeah.
And then next year there's no snowmaking, they drop way down. So it causes things to move, and we've had constant conversations of, should we go with a 3-year average, 5-year, to try to stabilize a little bit. But you're generally around 10.4%, in that 10.4, 10.5 range. That translates to about a little under $250,000 a year for access to the staff and everything we do.
Kim, does that include the power supply and purchasing?
It includes the staff time for power supply. It does not include the actual power cost itself. McDeal generator, you're a participant, and I'll talk more specifics about it in a second. But VEPSA has an ownership interest in the McNeil plant in Burlington, and then I think the only member that's not a participant in that project is Orleans. Everyone else is signed up for a share of that power. And the way we set it up is contracts between Hardwick and VEPSA that give you access to all of the benefits of the plant. So you get all the power, anything it produces, any value it produces goes to you, and you pay the same share of our costs, whatever those may be. And same thing with Project 10, that's a oil-fired peaking generator in Swanton. We're full owners of that, we operate it. Runs, this year's more, it's ran about 60 hours already this year. Generally, it's only running 5 to 10 hours a year. It's really there for reserving capacity. So it's there if ISO needs for emergencies. But there's a fair amount of money just for sitting there and being available to run. The renewable energy standard, that's a state requirement, which we got some language in the statute that allows the VEPSA members to act together, and everybody has agreed to do that. So we run the programs, we bill everyone for the cost of doing customer rebates, doing compliance filings and planning and everything that has to be done there. Again, your share is about $145,000. The Sanders grant I'll get into. We did collect the match for that grant in 2023 and 2024, and that's sitting on our books being spent down as we do work against the grant. The advanced meter project, which your capital cost for that is about $650,000 after counting a state grant we got. Your actual cost is closer to $1.2 million, but 48% of that's covered by the grant. And then once it's installed, there's about $30,000 a year ongoing O&M costs associated with it.
What year are those going to be installed?
So we're doing the communications network right now. I believe they're in the process of finalizing locations in Hardwick.
Yep, they went out with the crews, last couple of weeks and identified, you know, which poles need replacement in order to safely install them in the apparatus, but that's on.
Yeah.
So the next couple of years, I think we'll be seeing those costs, definitely for 26.
So 26, 27, we can expect implementation.
I would see the DCU, depending on your crew availability,
Mhm.
DCU should be going up in this fall, and then we're lining up for almost all of the meters to go in 2026.
Great.
And then the cost will hit on the back end of that. And I think I mentioned it before, but we secured a loan to finance it if you want us to do that. We set it up so members can pay direct if they want to, or we can roll it on our books and just bill it over time.
Great.
Central computer, really nothing you need to worry about there. It's a centralized billing system that originally had 4 member utilities and a couple have dropped off. So right now, Linden and Morrisville are the only 2 still on it. They pay all the costs. And then the GIS, which is really the mapping system. We've set it up so that there is a central server that VEPSA houses that has the software on it everybody can access. We pay the license fees for the software that's required. And we have a pool of money that's used to pay a consultant to do any upgrades that need to happen to maintain the software. It's a company called Empower that runs it. So between the server, the licensing, and that access to the consultant, that's about $31,000 a year for you. You're middle of the pack as far as the size on that one. And then we are, and I'll talk about this in a second, but we are working with Darren and team to collect data right now. And FEPS is trying to figure out how to real finance that and make it available to you. I don't want to spend any time on this budget, but I wanted to give you an idea of the way we put the budget together. It's just the projects listed across the top, and then for each project, the breakdown of which member pays how much. I know this is fuzzy, I took it off of another slideshow. Gives you an idea of what our board gets when they talk about our budget. The next few slides go deeper into the power supply, just talk about the types of things they do. So first thing is they do it annually, they do a power budget. It's a 5-year forward look at what your power costs could be. And it's based on the latest information we have as far as market prices, transmission rates that are projected. So that comes out usually December-ish to try to line it up so at the same time the VEPSA board's asked to approve our budget. You've also got your power costs in front of you, so you can see a nearly holistic view of what the costs will look like. From that, we do power planning procurement. So we're looking at long-term contracts, doing solar, wind, trying to do like 20, 25-year PPAs to make sure we're in compliance with the res. We do shorter annual term purchases for gaps that we're seeing. If you have a big customer come in or something that we need to balance what your load and resources are. And every month that team meets toward the end of the month looking for the future, saying, well, what do we need to do to balance for the next month? So we're really doing, outside in, trying to keep everything as hedged as we possibly can. And then I think Steve Farman mentioned the ISO interactions. That is a whole world unto itself. You have to bid resources in. We pay ISO twice a week. They bill us every 3 days for power costs. And we hold that on our books and bill the members once a month. So our finance team is every 3 days of processing bills from ISO. So in that, there's a whole stakeholder process. They've got, last count, I think it was 10 committees that talk about how the market works. We're there to represent all the members and make sure things are working the way they need to. Renewable energy credit market, so most of the resources that the members own at this point have some sort of renewable energy credit attached to them. And there's a whole market, bilateral market in New England states to trade these credits. Some resources are only valuable in Massachusetts or Connecticut or Rhode Island. So we're absorbing all the resources you have, bringing it where the most value is in the market, and selling or buying to make sure you're covered and trying to make the most out of the value. The renewable energy standard, there's a compliance piece, but the way the state set that up, it's like every 3 months you got something going on. So you have to file a planning document in one part of the year, then you get that approved, you run your programs, you track how many credits you've got, and in tier 3 in particular, which is the one where you have to help customers get off of fossil fuels, there's a whole rebate program you have to operate and collect that information and determine how many credits you've created. Then in the spring, you file saying this is how much we think we generated, and the state has to review it and decide whether you did or not. Quite often change the number. And then in the fall, you file your official compliance for the previous year. So aside from managing all of the recs and making sure that all your compliance obligations are met, we handle all that planning, all the compliance filings, and then we track internally by utility who has excess credits or who's short. So it's kind of a weird setup, because to the state, we look like one big VEPSA entity. We're complying in aggregate, but inside the tent, we're tracking everybody individually and making sure that you get credit for what you have, and if you don't have enough, you're buying from somebody else to cover. The monthly central dispatch billing, which this is tracking your interaction with ICE New England and how all the money flows. There is a power supply component to the rate cases and to IRPs that this group takes care of. And any projects we're looking at, and right now it's mostly solar and batteries. The background financial analysis to say whether those are the right decisions, this group also does that. And then ultimately that turns into testimony in the projects. With the planning department, it's rate cases, rate design. So we've had a lot of cases recently with economic development rates. You're trying to retain or attract a certain business. You want to give them, I wouldn't say a special deal, but you want to tailor the rates to what they're looking for. We can help with that. The IRPs, integrated resource plan, is a 20-year plan that we have to file every 3 years. And each utility is obligated to do that by statute. Public Utility Commission has a bunch of reports you have to submit. Federal government, to the Energy Information Administration, they've also got a list of reports. Got a report on your load, and each generator you have as a separate report has to be filed every year. So we handle that stuff. Class cost of service studies, honestly, we haven't done in probably 15 years. That's very detailed, where you're trying to figure out which customer class is contributing to your costs and how you allocate between the classes. We are expecting that once the AMI system gets in and we have actual load shape data, that's going to be an next request from the regulators. We're gearing up now for that round to come.
Makes you feel better. Even when I was at VEPS, I was pushing that from day one. I was like, dude, we need to start doing this.
Yeah, and we're hearing from more members that they want to do it, which is a little surprising. But we're expecting Swanton is starting to put meters in right now. So by this time next year, we expect they'll be having to do a class cost of service. They'll be the guinea pig at the front of the line. On the regulatory side, a lot of advocacy. We're just preparing a filing today related to Efficiency Vermont and how they're going to interact with utilities on load management. So we're trying to gather where all the utilities are in position, and put that into a central document and then file on behalf of everybody. Spent a lot of time talking to the Department of Public Service to try to guide them where we want them to be on policy issues. And then there's the committees that are created, right? The Vermont System Planning Committee, which the Public Utility Commission created about a decade ago to focus on transmission projects. Well, that's taken on a life of its own. It's got 6 committees now, and you have to. It's one of those things that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So you got to kind of be there, just watching what's going on all the time. We also handle issues at FERC and Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and NERC, National Electric Reliability Corporation. To the extent we're involved, NERC doesn't really apply to the VEPSA members. They're more interested in the bulk power system, the big transmission lines. But there are generators that we own parts that we're contracted with that have to comply, so we get pulled into it. Legislative, we deal with both the Vermont legislature, and they're quite, I testified 3 or 4 times this past year, we're there quite often, and then dealing with the congressional delegation in DC about 4 or 5 times a year, trying to meet with people. And we talked about the customer outreach, just a few examples of things we've done in the past. We are talking about, came out of the board retreat last week, doing more on customer satisfaction surveys, trying to set a baseline there that we can measure against.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
And grants, we've had fits and starts. We've under the Biden administration, we spent a lot of time putting grants in. They had, large billions of dollars of energy grants. Now we're seeing all that clawed back. Even grants we've received, we're being told, don't work on it anymore, you may not be there. But now we're hearing some of the members asking if we can work on grants not even specific to the electric department. Can you get into water? Can you do sewer? I mean, a lot of the members are villages or towns where they're looking at holistically at their enterprise funds and trying to figure out how do they manage the grants and saying, well, can we provide some support? I think that's a bit of a stretch, but it's something we'll look at. IT we talked about, it's everything from designing networks, acquiring hardware, network support, looking at system security, physical security, building security we're starting to do, managing licenses and warranties and things of that nature. And now more recently getting into bigger IT projects, AMI being the first one, but we're in the process of looking at a distributed energy resource management system, the DERMS they call it. We actually have a joint grant with Burlington Electric and Washington Co-op that we're looking at whether we can procure one central system for all 3 of us. That's underway right now, and then coming out of the retreat last week, SCADA system for the distribution network became one of our top priorities. That's really driven by data that the Velco, the transmission provider, is looking for. They need it to meet their requirements from the federal government, but they've basically told us if we can't provide the data, they're going to have to look at ways to come into our system to take it. And as a group, the VEPSA members have said, no, we'll provide the data, we'll figure out a way to get it. So that's now on our plate. And substation metering, little known item, but VEPSA reports all of the load information from our members to Velco in order to do the settlement of ice in the wing. So we have to collect the information from each of your substations and then send it to Velco so they can process it. and determine how much our load is compared to everybody else in the state. Finance, deal with the Velco and Transco equity coverages, project financings. Bond, we only got one bond out right now, it's related to the Project 10 generator, but we have authority to issue tax exempt bonds, so it's, that whole compliance and reporting aspect is in the finance group. They handle the invoicing. All of our federal grants have pretty significant reporting requirements and very complicated invoicing. So that's finance. We have one person in the finance group, but that's about half of their job is just managing all that reporting and invoicing. And then they're the secretary for the board of directors. And just ad hoc, a few things that we're involved with. VEPSA as an entity gets one seat on the local board of directors, and the VEPSA board has appointed me to hold that seat. Typically, it's the GM, whoever's in my seat is the representative. Several years ago, we bought 20% interest in a company called Hometown Connections. It's owned by 6 joint action agencies similar to VEPSA from around the country. And we look at setting up projects that we can run jointly and offer out to other joint action agencies. So it's trying to make the link between best in breed vendors and smaller utilities who need services. So, I sit on their board as well. The Transmission Access Policy Study Group is known as TAPS. It's 35 utilities from around the country who banded together to lobby at FERC in particular, do some congressional stuff, but it's mostly FERC to try to make sure that consumers are factored into transmission policy decisions as much as can be. You saw the transmission rate increases, it's going up 10 to 15% a year, and we're doing everything we can to try to get FERC to put limits on how much money can be raised. Heavily involved in NEPA. Somehow I got roped into being on their board, and now I seem to be on the path to presidency in a couple of years. Looking for a replacement so I can avoid it. And then APPA, we're pretty active with APPA on the regulatory front. They started calling on me in particular to join them at FERC meetings and when they're going into congressional offices. They like to have people from different regions of the country. So VEPS has become pretty active representing the Northeast whenever they want to talk to somebody.
What percent of power in the United States is public power? You've got the monstrous things like TVA or what are the what does it add up to?
Yeah, we're customer wise we're about 20%.
Okay, so
power wise I think it's a little bit less.
Sure, because you're rural.
Yeah,
yeah.
But there's like 2,200 public utilities around the country.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's
a fun thing to.
Yeah.
And then co-ops are in that, or they're in the other?
They're a separate. They're a little bit different animal.
Yeah.
Because they're for profit according to the IRS, the way they think about it. NRECA, their equivalent of American Public Power, very strong in Washington.
Okay.
Got a very good lobby activity. I don't know if we want to go through these individual projects, but I broke out the percentage you have, like at McNeil. We own 19% of McNeil, and you own 7.758% of our share.
Okay.
So I'll give you an idea of your ratios.
Well, I asked Ken to put those in there because I think it's an important piece to know is that we have a contractual, obligation and commitment to VEPS's ownership share in various things, and there's a statutory obligation to recover that obligation through rates by statute.
And right now, where's it stand with the shutdown?
Not talking shutdown.
Good.
We were talking to DED about selling our share to them. All three joint owners were talking, both Green Mountain Power
Yeah.
and Vepsa were looking to sell.
Yeah,
Burlington, we weren't able to reach.
so it's still up in the air, yeah.
Yeah, so negotiations officially ended on the 15th.
Okay,
So we're not in negotiations now, but we're continuing to talk about, can we structure something that will work? I think GMP is a little bit more anxious than we are to get out. They've got some political commitments that they've made that make McNeil difficult for them. We're more interested in cost, so it wouldn't, whether it's sales, shutdown, restructuring of how it operates, and we're more open to how do we make this work?
Yeah.
Where I don't think GMP is looking at it quite that way. Key thing on McNeil is there's two components. Vepsa does allocate some of our staff time to the project. In particular, I sit on their operating committee, so we're there to participate in like budget votes, and we have quarterly meetings to review the operations. But the vast majority of the bill that we're sending to you is passed on from Burlington. Like Burlington operates the plant, so they bill us for the fuel costs, the capital costs. We process it in our books and then forward the bill on to the members that are participating. So we only have indirect control over those costs ourselves. We can skip the central computer, that doesn't really affect you, I just want to make you aware of it. Project 10, I think I mentioned, we've got one full-time employee up there who does the maintenance. That came about because they built Project 10, I think it was around 2012, turned it on, and the first thing they did was catch fire. So a huge insurance fight, rebuilding it, and they realized, originally was set up to be unmanned. ISO New England could turn it on from Holyoke, Massachusetts. They can run it without anybody being there. And the original plan was that we just have contractors come in and maintain it once in a while. And they quickly found out that they really need somebody there. So we have one person there all the time. About 120,000 gallons of stored fuel.
that's a lot of fuel.
That's enough to run about 20 hours.
No kidding,
Yeah.
no kidding. So this thing can make a lot of power.
Yeah,
And
about
why is
48 about 48 megawatts.
Why has it run so much this year?
It's been going on the last few years.
Yeah, it's going up. I don't think we can point to anything particular, but it's very interesting that it tends to run on the hot, sunny days when the solar's really pounding, and then in the evening when the solar starts to decrease, all of a sudden we get turned on.
It's typically on like the peak event, when ISO New England calls a peak event in the evenings. Is this running pretty much right in tandem with their?
It used to be tied to the peak times.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing it more involved when really sunny, hot days. Not necessarily peak, but it seems to be more resulting from how quickly the solar leaves the system.
Mm-hmm.
Fill in that gap.
And then they need to fill something quickly.
Yeah.
So we can turn on in about 10 minutes.
Oh wow.
And
That's
that become, all these small oil generators get turned on for that period.
Wow.
So until battery storage really gets in and can take that,
Yeah.
fill that gap.
All right, last fun fact question. What does it cost what does it cost to generate that power with that fuel oil? You know, at today's fuel oil costs.
Yeah.
Just rule of thumb.
I think we're bidding in at, probably shouldn't say that on camera.
Okay, don't do it.
No, I mean, fuel oil in general, you're talking like 25 cents kilowatt.
Oh, wow, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
You know, some are, depending on your efficiency, some a little higher, some a little lower, but you're in that ballpark.
Wow.
Is ISO? You mentioned that ISO New England's is paying a base fee for the availability of peaking, correct, right? Are they like, because they're benefiting from the availability of the resource, is there some level that they're paying?
Yeah, so this generator actually makes money,
Yeah, okay.
but it makes it through 3 different markets.
Mhm.
And there are like 8 markets in the ISO unit, so when you turn your light switch on, it's actually made up of 8 separate products. The peaking plant here gets paid for capacity,
Yeah,
so it's getting a certain amount of money just for being there,
yeah,
that we can produce 48 megawatts. Then we're getting paid for what they call reserves,
mhm,
and that's the fact that we can turn on in 10 minutes and they can count on it. So you have to bid in what you want to be paid for that capability. So that's another revenue stream. And between capacity and reserve, that's the bulk of the money we make off this plant.
yeah,
And then energy, which, as I said, typically past years, we've only run for energy 10 hours a year. You know, it's like $20,000 in energy payments.
yeah,
This year, we're running 60 hours already and expecting more. And we're running it, you know, it costs 25 cents a typical run, but you're running when the prices
When
are
the
$600, $700, $800 a megawatt hour.
yeah,
So you're getting paid 80 cents a kilowatt hour, cost of 25.
yeah. You're getting paid whatever the LMP at that time is.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, not to get too far in the weeds, but there's a whole penalty structure.
Mhm.
If ISO New England gets into operating reserve issue, they have what they call MLCC2. So they have an emergency condition, and there's a penalty structure that kicks in, and generators that are producing get paid by the generators who aren't. So if you were supposed to be there and you didn't show up, and then we turn on and we actually provide the power, there's a transfer payment from the folks who weren't there to the folks who were. And that can be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you hit the right time. A lot of complexity. I think we've made it about as complex as we can.
Yeah.
And so just to wrap up here, you take about 10% of that generator. So you pay the cost, 10%, you get whatever the revenue is, you get credit for it. The renewable energy standard, again, we run it, there was a question?
I think so.
We run the renewable energy standard programs in the aggregate for all VEPS members. So we handle the compliance, we do the rebates, we design the programs, we work with Efficiency Vermont because we have to coordinate with the efficiency utility in getting customer rebates, making sure everything's tracked correctly. And then in compliance, after last year's bill passed, there's 5 tiers now that we have to meet for WES. Tier 1, the base requirement, is like you have to prove it's renewable power that can be delivered to New England. It's pretty generic, and that's the biggest bucket. Goes up to like 75, 80%. Tier 2 is small scale, has to be less than 5 megawatts, attached to a Vermont distribution system. That almost entirely is solar. We managed to get our hydro plant, so if you do get Wolcott back up and running, it will qualify as a tier 2 resource. So that's helped a little bit with that cost, because the hydro now qualifies, but it's primarily solar to meet it. The tier 3, the energy transformation, that's a difficult calculation you have to do, and Sarah did that when she worked with us. It can get very convoluted in trying to figure out, well, customer reduced so certain amount of fuel, how many credits does that actually translate to? And now there's tier 4 and 5. Tier 4 applies to Hardwick, and that's around new renewable generation. So you have to acquire a percentage of your load served by renewables that were built after 2010. Now, when they picked new, they actually backdated it by 15 years and said that's new. Tier 5 is if you're 100% renewable utility, so in our case, that's Swanton. They have to meet any incremental load that comes onto their system with this new renewables. So even though they were 100% previously, if their load grows by 2%, they have to show that 2% of their generation is from a new renewable resource. So we're handling all of that. Talked about the AMI project, where that stands. I'm happy to talk further, but you guys have heard about it several times, so I don't need to dive into details. The GIS project, centralized mapping is Esri based, so ArcGIS, with a MPower overlay. So it's a company that built a mapping tool on top of Esri that has some analytics built into it. So once you get your system built out, they can do transformer loading studies, line loading studies, things like that. Our budget is around $250,000 a year. You're 13% of that cost, 15.4. And I just gave a rough outline of how that splits out. So it's about $10,000 a year in licensing fees, about $5,000 for us to manage everything, and then the rest is really going into that bucket for consultants. So
So
anytime.
the real key is this is a significant cost item for us, and we're not yet deriving benefits, so we gotta get on the stick and, which
Right.
is your goal.
Well, the field data is being collected as we speak, and I think they should be pretty close to finishing the initial collection, which was the holdup all along.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, when Mike was a manager here, I mean, we tried different ways to gather the data, and we never could quite get it off the ground. So I
Right.
think, between Scott and Sarah, we got MPower in here actually doing the field collection. Beth's put itself in the middle. We're gonna pay the bill, which is a fairly significant cost that MPower wanted up front. $160,000 or something like that. We're covering.
Wow.
And
That's
then,
for data collection, field work?
it's
For-
everything though, from serial, it's everything on hold.
They're visiting every pole, collecting pole information, transformers, line sizes, pole attachments, the whole works. And then we've agreed we'll front it and then we'll collect over time, whatever works in your repayment schedule. We're doing the same thing, did it with Barton and Jacksonville, are going through the same process. I agree, I mean, we're struggling to try to make sure we get value out of this.
Yeah.
And,
What have we been paying Empower $15,000 a year for in the past?
It goes into a bucket, basically, and if they need to come in and tweak the server, if they need training for your line crew on how to collect the data going forward, all of that stuff.
So we're putting it in the VEPSA bucket.
Yep.
And then VEPSA is allocating it.
Yep.
Yeah, and quite often we don't spend it all, and it'll turn into a refund the following year, so it goes to decrease the cost. But it's there if we need it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that's also part of the OMS structure, right?
OMS gets rolled in, we don't have that up and running yet. OMS will be the next layer on top of this.
When do we expect to have a usable circuit map out of this?
I don't know how far along they are, but I mean, as soon as they're done with the total field collection, it's available, it's online.
So, a month or two.
I think they're supposed to be done within the next 4 weeks,
Amazing. Great news.
or less.
Yeah.
Really great news.
Yeah, and then we'll have to talk about trading after that, because once you get it up and running, then whenever you do a line extension or replace equipment, we gotta make sure that there's a process for capturing that. Sanders grant, this is one of them that we're dealing with the federal government on. It was $1 million earmark in 2022. Took us 18 months to get a grant agreement through DOE. Got our first project up and running in Northfield with Darn Tough Socks. And now we're being told there's about $375,000 left in the grant, and we're put on hold. They're trying to figure out whether they're still gonna give it to us or not. But the whole premise was we wanted to create a revolving loan fund for tier 3 credits on commercial industrial, because that's where the biggest bang is. You get a lot of credits for 1 or 2 projects.
What did you do at Darn Tough to meet the requirements?
So Darn Tough was doing a roof replacement on their main building,
Yeah,
and as part of that, they wanted to triple the insulation on the roof.
yeah.
So we were able to loan them the money to do the roof replacement. They helped us calculate how many gallons of propane that would reduce in their heating requirement. And we were able to tend to save propane into tier 3 credits. Everybody gets, one of the benefits here is because that's a loan program, every member, even though it's located in Northfield, you all get a share of the credits.
Got it.
And our thought was if we can put that loan program in place and make it available to industrial customers going forward, then we don't have to cut them a check, an incentive check to do the work. We can give them 0 interest loan, which saves them money, doesn't cost us anything, and we still get the credits.
And what's the duration of the loan for them?
In this case, it's 5 years.
And then a balloon, they just have to pay off?
They're paying it every month, actually on their electric bill in Northfield, so.
They're amortizing it over. Okay.
Yeah, so in their case,
Ah, that's
it
cool.
was a 5-year loan, 3% interest. It was the first one, we had to collect some admin
okay.
fees back. A 5-year loan, 3% interest which was less than half of what they were getting on the open market. And Northfield agreed to collect the payment on their electric bill. So when Darn Tough gets its bill every month, it includes the loan payment. They have an ACH set up to pay it. Northfield gets the money and passes it back to us.
And does the revolving loan fund continue regardless of the grant?
The $575,000 we drew
Yeah.
will be available as Darn Tough pays it back. We're just not sure we'll get the whole million.
Yep.
Two more slides and I'll be out of your hair here. We did last year, we did an IT/OT roadmap. So Jackie Lemmerhurt, who you may have run into on the AMI project, she's helping us set that up. Her and her team came in and met with each member. I know they met with Hardwick. I think Mike was still here when this happened. And went through like what your IT systems were, what you had in place, and compared that against where the state was suggesting we should have in place going forward. And then tried to figure out, well, how do we get from where we are today to where we need to be in the future? They did a roadmap for each member individually and then compiled it into a VEPSA-wide and said, well, if we do this as a joint, what's it look like? And their recommendation was that we get the AMI installed, get the GIS operational. Once those base systems are in place, then we look at SCADA. So getting more data coming back from the distribution system and being able to do some controls there. And then move on to either the DERMS, which we ended up, from a state grant, we ended up doing DERMS now. Kind of we're forced to. And then advanced distribution management. So being able to do some more analytics on the distribution system. And then ultimately, by 2029 would be the plan to have a full data warehouse, where we can actually get all the data in and start doing some detailed analytics and data science on it. So that's the ultimate kind of roadmap to where we want to go. SCADA is next up, looking at that. And the last slide is something that what came out of our strategic retreat last week. I just wanted to put this in front of you. Board of Directors, order of priority here, SCADA, top of the list, get the RFP out, get that project started. Looking at the EEU structure, we're having a lot of tension with Efficiency Vermont on the regulatory side. So the board was interested in seeing whether there was other structures for efficiency services that would work better. So we're going to be taking a look at what's possible there. The financing we talked about. A lot of the VEPSA members are looking at capital projects. We've got a couple of members that are in financial difficulty right now, and we're trying to help them work through overdue bills They're struggling with the power costs, I mean, the high winter power costs, they're trying to figure out how to handle that. So the board has instructed us to put in place financial policies that will allow the members to use VEPSA as a capital funding source when they're doing large projects. So our finance team's already started reaching out to banks and trying to think about what that policy would look like.
Great.
But the plan is, instead of, as you said, Roger, you know, you're gonna reach a point where you hit your limit in borrowing. I think a lot of them are thinking the same way, and so they're trying to think, can VEPSA act in the middle and use our clout to raise the capital that then we make available to the utilities?
Yeah, and I think one of our concerns, which Eric, we talked about, you know, at a town level and a Hardwick Electric level is, you know, are we knowledgeable enough? Can we possibly be knowledgeable enough in what opportunities there are? You know, how can you access grant monies, capital, you know? There's just no way we can do that as effectively as you can do it for all the memberships, so.
Well, and I think even on top of that, there's also an opportunity to enter into partnership with some of our sister utilities that are nearby on a smaller scale to share the resources and knowledge on implementing those projects too. And I think that's a great benefit.
And then beyond that, you know, we're hoping for those magical, really great deal opportunities. But then if you tap those out or they don't suit your need, just plain having the banking relationships in the state of Vermont, where you know which banks really want to be in this sector, they want to lend here, you know what they need, you set it all up, and just, so we're not bumping around town looking,
Yeah, I think we've dealt with, I wouldn't say every bank, but almost every bank in the state at one point or another, and it's pretty clear who's interested and hungry, and who will give you money, but they're not really gonna do anything for the relationship.
Right, that's great.
And Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, part of that conversation too is about actually having, you know, capital planning as part of that borrowing or using VEPSA as a mechanism. So I think it kind of establishes some support for the IRP planning process and load plan, resource planning, all that as well.
Yeah, the planning aspect comes up in a few places here, so definitely, I mean, part of what we've been asked to prepare is what's possible, put the policies in place, but also what criteria are members gonna have to meet in order to access that capital.
Yes.
And one of the criteria is actually having a capital plan.
Sure.
You've laid out at least a 5-year plan of what you think you're gonna be doing, so we can have ideas of what we need for capital.
Great.
Legislative, I think we got the message loud and clear that the board at least is feeling like VEPSA's gotten reactionary in the legislature. So we're consciously making an effort this year to get more proactive, set the structure in place so we're carrying the message in advance of bills being put in, rather than waiting and then see what was put in and trying to react to it. Data standards, this is more of an efficiency issue. We're finding, especially with DPS right now, the new commissioner is really pushing more data coming out of the utilities for the regulators to be able to make decisions. And we're finding there's a lot of friction, maybe that's the wrong word, but we get a request, we ask the member utility, the member sends us, and a lot of times it's taking a while to get the data, and then it comes in a format that's not really compatible, and we have to reorganize it. So we're thinking, setting some standards for how we transfer data and trying to get consistent in not what the asks are necessarily, but how, the format that the data is moving back and forth. So we're going to spend some time trying to figure out what do we need to collect and what's the best format, and see if we can work with each member to, whether we have to, you know, have a report generated out of your billing system or something that looks the same way. Just free up some staff time. And the last item was a lot of conversation about members very rapidly going from everything's fine to my world's on fire. And then invariably we get the call, like, yeah, can you help us? And we're scrambling, trying to figure out what we can do. So the board was really interested in us thinking about, well, how can we get some advance notice? So right now, we're looking at kind of a health scorecard as a way to do this. So look at some metrics around staffing, finances, do benchmarking and see how members compare. And then the ones that aren't doing so well, we could proactively go in and try to figure out, well, what can we do to strengthen you? Rather than waiting until everything's on fire to have that conversation. A lot of information, happy to answer questions now, or if you have them in the future, just reach out, give a call. Happy to host any of you at FEPSA and do kind of a orientation discussion with the staff if that's helpful too.
That's great, thank you.
That was fantastic, thanks, Tim.
Well deserved hour of conversation. Kind of for an hour over. So Michael, the next thing on the agenda are the general manager reports, which, to be honest, it was a long month of actually working and doing stuff, and so I didn't get to the recap and writing it. I can give you high-level points. We're working through various, redundancies still and policies and kind of internal procedures and making sure we have stuff documented. Customer relations, we've been working, we did the DPS presentation for the resiliency workshop a couple weeks ago, and also have I was waiting, it took a lot longer than I anticipated, but the website has been updated with a live feed of our Facebook account and also a news announcements section of the website, and we'll be implementing those process and customer journey kind of content onto the website here in the next week or so, I think. Sarah and I have been working on that. Power operations and energy resources, pretty much the same. I think our power supply is still, it's coming in at the typical rates and dollar values for this time of year. I think the sunshine is good and we'll take that as it comes as far as internal generation. And we have approved or sent interconnection approvals to projects that are requesting to interconnect for the CAE and a couple other larger projects that are interconnecting to the system. And that took some time, but it was required, and we've been working through it and trying to improve that process overall, which it is getting faster.
So do we update how we're advertising outages that we talked about last time for people?
So I've been posting more when there are certain storms coming up, or if there are large system outages I've done that on VT outages, and also on Facebook I've tried to incorporate either myself or after hours, or if it's during hours, work with the office staff to post those outages. And it's been working well enough. I do look forward to it being an automated process, or at least having a better sense of how many customers are out right off, and we've been improving that through the notifications with CRC, what I'm getting automatically by email as soon as a call comes in versus dispatch, and then reporting when it's closed, which has been helpful. For the onesie-twosie outages, where it's literally just one customer, it's not something I've been putting on VT outages because that is intended for large outages, large impacts of customer outages. So that's been the approach so far. I think it has worked or is working, and I think there's always room for improvement and adjustment. But I'm certainly happy to hear any feedback you guys have if you have heard otherwise.
All right, we have 2 executive sessions.
Sorry, Michael, 3 quick questions.
Sure.
One, a request, could we aim for board materials by close of business Friday for Tuesday meetings?
Yes.
Awesome. With all of our talk about vegetation clearing earlier, we previously discussed notifying customers before clearing can happen. Have we implemented that? How's it going?
It seems to be going well. I think our working foreman is not keen on necessarily all the calls, but I think we're working through it, and I think it's a really good exercise on, that most people just want to get an understanding of what's going on. And, I think we're working on also training some of the front office staff to field some of those calls instead of them all going to the working foreman, because I don't necessarily think that's the best time to hit use of his time and resources. But yes, that's
Really?
occurring.
That sounds great. And then, does anybody take advantage of the new policy of being able to have initial conversations with HED without the fee this past month?
Yes, we have issued 2 or 3, I think, already scoping
Great.
documents. And I think it's been a bit of a challenge or struggle, I think, to make sure that all the staff understand exactly how far you're going and what exactly should be included and establishing what that baseline, dollar value should be. But yeah, we're working through it.
That's great. So I think all of those are huge wins from a customer relation standpoint and important new policies. I wonder if there's any room to communicate that those things have happened and we have new policies in place.
That's what I'm hoping, now that the website has, now that we can actually edit some of the content without using a third party, that's where I intend to do that announcement and utilize that far more frequently.
Great. Would it make sense to put something in the Gazette or something for people who don't regularly check our website?
Sure, yeah.
Love it. Goodwill.
Excellent. Okay. All right, Michael.
We're done with Ken. Ken, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you. We did have a request from our friend who is recording that when we go into executive session that we can go to the room downstairs or, because he can't quite, it depends if we're gonna be taking action or not. But if it works for the group, then we can migrate into the meeting room and
Sure,
or
definitely.
the other room. That works.
Thank you for being here.
You're going to the other room to do the executive session?
Correct. Okay, I'll bring you with us, don't worry.
Okay. So what's the first one about?
First executive session is for personnel matter.
Okay. So, and what time is it?
It is 8:15.
So it's 8:15, and we'll be going into executive session, discuss a personnel issue, a premature disclosure of which would be detrimental to Hardwick Electric.
Second?